what does it mean to accomplish the impossible? What does it mean for you personally to accomplish the impossible? Perhaps it might mean to drop 15 kilos of body fat. Perhaps it might mean to stop negative self-talk. And for some of us, perhaps it might mean to stop contemplating suicide. In Sweden, however, accomplishing the impossible could be summarized into one sentence. And that is that no loss of life is acceptable on the road or in traffic. In 1997, Sweden presented Vision Zero, a nationwide incentive to end all deaths in traffic. And that's when I was raised, in a country where they thought they could accomplish the impossible. And growing up in Sweden comes with a lot of perks. We have Northern Light, IKEA, amazing summers, even though they're usually one day long. And we also have an incredibly strong passport. But there is always a polar opposite. And I know a lot of us here watching in the audience have experienced some type of racism, whether that is at work, at school, or maybe even at our family teaching cable. Growing up in Sweden, however, gave me the unique experience of being faced with neo-Nazis, skinheads. I have clear memories going to schools where neo-Nazis were looking for me. I also remember walking in town when I'm about 12 years old together with my best friend at the time, getting screamed at by two grown men calling my friend a race traitor just because he spent time together with me. So during this time, I'm doing my best to fit in. I'm insecure, but I'm doing my best. So I'm starting doing martial arts to be able to defend myself, but also to be able to boost my confidence. But after doing that for a couple of years, I finally find a place where I could express myself and become the man I am today. And it wasn't martial art, it was dancing. I found Twisted Feet Dance Academy in the city center of Gothenburg. But even though I found dancing, I was still looking for something. I was Swedish with a Cape Verdean father, Swedish but not enough, Cape Verdean but not enough, too white for the black kids and too black for the white kids. So at 90 years old, me and my best friend, who is still my best friend, is here in the audience with us today, we set out to accomplish our personal impossible. We were going to find ourselves. Not in Sweden, so we start backpacking. We travel across Asia, we travel to Australia, and I finally end up in Norway. And in Norway, I'm living together with my dance crew. Shout out to Left Side Crew. We are about 12 people living in one house together. It's absolute mayhem, but it's some of the greatest memories in my life. And during this time in my life, I'm still insecure. I'm still struggling with low self-confidence, but I'm amazing at faking it, so nobody really knows. And fast forward a couple of years, it's the same year as I shaved my head, which is also the same year I'm becoming a professional dancer, which is also the same year as I'm becoming a professional model. And during this time in my life, I'm absolutely crushing it. I'm all over the world. I'm traveling in and out of Norway. I go to Los Angeles, New York, South Africa, Germany, Spain. I have one of the biggest winter campaigns in the entire nation. My face is in 100+ stores across all Norway. I'm going on dates with Miss Norway. And then when I'm at this peak of illusion that I'm living, of illusion of social media perfection, I run into a wall. And from nowhere, I'm starting to get daily panic anxiety attacks. And if you never had one of these, I'm very happy for you. And if you had one of these, you know exactly what I mean when I say that one can be life-changing. I used to have 6 of these panic anxiety attacks per day. So my entire existence was just one big panic anxiety attack. I could wake up in the middle of the night having one of these, complete panic. So I stopped trusting myself during this time. I stopped dancing, I stopped modeling, I started isolating myself because I'm terrified of what I see of as public humiliation. Just imagine if I have one of these anxiety attacks on stage. And right when I'm at my personal bottom, I find a light. And her name was Sandra Romano Brun. She was my first mentor, and she's still my mentor until today. And she gave me an introduction to the power of the subconscious mind. She gave me breathing exercises that I'm using until today, and she taught me the vital importance of thought control. So during this time in my life, I'm working with all of this, and she gave me space. Sandra gave me space to be able to express myself, and I'm starting to talk more on the phone with my mom, which I just spent endless amount of hours talking to. Let's give a quick round of applause to all the parents that have children that are struggling with panic anxiety. Lord knows what you guys go through. So I'm starting to trust myself a bit more, and I'm starting to go to the gym. And I understand during this time that I have no other option than to take responsibility and accomplish my personal impossible, which is to take ownership over my mental health. And then one day, I'm at the gym, feeling good. I'm doing some curls for the girls. Summer is around the corner, feeling good about myself. And then from nowhere, I feel that sensation. And I just pray that what I think is about to happen won't happen. And I feel how my heart is starting to beat faster. I get a weight. I feel how people are starting to look at me, and I'm starting to get anxious. I lay down on the ground. I try to calm myself down, and from nowhere, full-on panic anxiety attack. All the walls are closing in. My mind is running 1,000 places. I have this pressure in my forehead. I feel everything everybody's looking at me. All the walls are closing in, so I decide to run out on the streets. And on the streets, I'm super confused. I don't know what's happening. Should I run to the emergency room? Should I get back home? Should I go into the gym? So I decide to jump into a cab, and in the cab, it's absolute mayhem. I'm throwing up out of the window. I'm screaming. I'm crying. I'm beating the walls. I'm throwing up on myself. I'm trying to call my mom. After an hour of this, I finally end up home, and I stumble into my kitchen. Stu and Kiski and my two brothers, they come and they pick me up. They put me on the sofa. I'm still crying, still screaming, and the only thing I can think about is the sharp kitchen knife that I know is in the second drawer in the kitchen, because I just want to kill myself. But I don't. And in the dance community, we have this expression, which is called fake it till you make it, which is something I never agreed with. It's not about faking it until you're making it, it's about doing it until you're becoming it. Now, all of these stories that I told you, this is no longer who I am. This is what I've been through. And I was able to go through all of this because I created a relationship with the highest version of my mental self. And our ancient ancestors in the Kemetic kingdom, which is now called Egypt, used to call this process the process of becoming, kepra, which is represented by a small bug called the dung beetle, whose entire existence is dependent on the poop of an elephant. Just bear with me for a second. I promise it's going to make total sense. So if you imagine a big pile of elephant poop here in front of me, the male and the female dung beetle, they get together, take a small ball of poop, pushes it away to the side in the secluded area where the female dung beetle later lays its eggs inside of this little ball. The baby dung beetles later hatches the eggs, obviously. The baby dung beetles feeds off this ball of poop, and they crawl up towards the sun in a beautiful representation of life. And then the whole process just repeats itself. And I think that's such a beautiful symbolism of male and females working together to accomplish the impossible. In this case, creating life from poop. So the analogy I like to use there is that sometimes you really have to go through some shit in order for you to later become the shit. And I think we can all agree on that right now, as a human race, we're definitely going through some shit, especially when it comes to our mental health. And if it's just one thing I want you guys to take away from today's talk, is that when it comes to your trauma and your mental health issues, it's very easy to blame somebody else. I could blame the Nazis from where I used to live. Here in Cape Verde, where we are right now, we could blame the colonizers, and probably rightfully so. But even if it's somebody else's fault that you're feeling how you're feeling, it's still your responsibility. And if all of us here in Cape Verde and all our distant relatives across the nation in the diaspora courageously and unapologetically focus on restoring the masculine and feminine balance that was brutally stripped away and ruthlessly dismantled by the pure wickedness and audacity of the colonizers, then we can accomplish the impossible. And when I first came to Cape Verde, I kept saying, I want to give back, I want to give back. And I believe that's the sentiment that a lot of us from the diaspora have. We want to give back to where we come from. But all of that changed the first day I met someone who is now a good friend of mine, Pedro Lopes. And he kept me hearing saying, I want to give back, I want to give back. And then he stopped and he's saying, brother, don't think that you have to give back to Cape Verde because you never took anything. So what are you going to give back to Cape Verde if you never stole anything? Instead think, how can you, add value to our community because you're a part of it. So I thought to myself, that was such a simple but yet consciousness-expanding view, to not focus on giving back, but to focus on adding value to our community because I'm a part of it. So I thought to myself, with the expertise that I now have, after training over tens and thousands of people to get mentally and physically stronger for over a decade, training artists and dance champions such as Muhumbi and Madonna, yeah, that Madonna, let me look into this mental health thing here on the islands. And according to the Institute of Health and Evaluation Metrics, Cape Verde ranks in top 14 of most suicides per capita in the world. So out of 195 countries that exist worldwide, Cape Verde ranks in top 14 in most people killing themselves. And 90% of these suicides are done by men. Now, the crazy thing about this, more than obviously just the staggering numbers that we have in front of us, is that our cousin across the ocean, South Tome and Principe, they have amongst the lowest suicide rates in the world, which makes me believe that we have a cultural problem here on the islands. Now, this is obviously not just a Cape Verdean problem, this is a world problem. Every 40th second, somebody decides to end their own life. So, I spend a lot of time thinking, okay, how can I add value? I wanted to focus on the cause, not just the effect. And some of the things I've done personally since I came here about a year and a half ago is that I set up different support groups where men, brothers get together, communicate with each other. I also set up what is, according to some of the nation's biggest mental health incentive online, which is something I'm obviously very proud of. And I'm currently working on an AI solution which I believe will improve mental health worldwide and help digitalize healthcare. So, how do we prevent this from happening? More than the things I just said, obviously. Since this is an us problem, this requires an us solution. Not just us as Cape Verdean, us as a human race. And my solution is very simple, but I believe it's a fundamental step in the right direction. So it's essentially two things about two things, very simple to remember. So if you're imagining two big circles here in front of me overlapping each other, so it's two things about two things. So in the first circle it says take responsibility, and in the second circle it says ask. Who are you going to take responsibility over? Number one, yourself, because your mental health is your responsibility. Then you need to take responsibility over your community. Why? Because we are Ubuntu. Then you need to ask, okay, who do you need to ask? If you're struggling with mental health issues, please ask for help, because if you're suffering, it's probably because you're suffering in silence. Join online communities, in person, whatever it takes. And then you need to ask people in your community, how are you doing? And not just the fast and casual as we love to do here. Oj, på rätt manera, är vidare. You need to talk to people, how are you doing for real? And especially those people that we know for a fact are dealing with mental health issues, because we all have these tendencies to don't touch or get involved in things that we don't really need to. But they are the people that need us the most. And to all the women watching, all the queens in the audience, I can imagine that you sometimes feel that you're already carrying the heavy load of the relationship, and sometimes rightfully so. But much like the male dung beetle needed a female dung beetle, much like I needed my mother, Sandra, all throughout my mental health journey, please help us, because we men are killing ourselves. If we could get out of this without you, we would have done it already. And to all the men watching, it's time for us to man up, take responsibility, start communicating more with our brothers and the women in our circles, because we need them. A lot of people were skeptical when Sweden first presented Vision Zero in 1997, the nationwide incentive to end all deaths in traffic. But it actually took Volvo, the Swedish car company, 12 years before they finally came up with a model that would live up to that promise. it's about the same time as it took from me to become the person I am, that I was in Norway, until the person I am today. According to TEDxMindelo research, nobody have ever died in a Volvo XC90 since that model was first launched in 2002. And I'm certain that if we all take our personal responsibility, start to look at this from a long-term horizon, start checking up on each other, we can create a family, a business, a nation. We can create a world where nobody decides to end their own lives. Together, we can accomplish the impossible. Thank you. Love.